Sasquatch got me. It was dark, I was riding, jumped out with a stick, and slashed a hole in the side of my tire on the last riding trip. So I thought I'd bring you guys along and show you how to permanently, the exact same method that is used to make a tire, to fix a sidewall gash. We're going to vulcanize new rubber on. It's easier than you think. Keep watching. I'm going to show you how to permanently do it so it lasts the life of the tire. Now this is not the same method I showed in my other video. That method is something you could do on the trail wherever you are. This, you have to be in a shop and do it. The other method, I'll have a video link to that. This is completely different, but that method works amazing as well and would work in this scenario. To break the bead on ATV tires, you almost need one of these. This is a bead breaker that I made in a video a while ago. That has saved my butt on car tires, truck tires, everything. Those are awesome. Let's look at the damage though. We got a screwdriver sticking out of it. This one actually isn't bad. We're only about an inch long. This tire right here, we're just shy of $200. So this is a $200 tire that, I mean, still has fantastic tread. Let's keep it going. This one already usually designates as a radial. It actually does not say radial anywhere on there, but I'm assuming it's a radial. I'll tell you why that makes a difference. Since we're fixing a sidewall gash slash, if it's a radial, all the strings in there run just like this. Boom, boom, boom. If it's a bias ply, you know, just like these X's right here, the threads run this way and this way. So the threads are way stronger on a bias ply, and on a bias ply tire, you can fix a way longer, way wider gash, bigger gash, and it's more reliable than you can on a radial. So, but first thing we got to do is I'm going to mark it on the inside and the outside. These little yellow marks are far enough out where I don't buff, so I can always tell where the exact center is, because you'll lose it. You'll see. Now, this is one of your dies that it's actually going to form the new rubber. This is the outside die, and it's going to go right there. And you can see like these protrusions, these patterns kind of get in the way. You're going to have to grind all that off. Or another trick is you can actually cut it away and glue it back on afterwards. So we're going to attempt that. So I'm just going to cut this away. I've done it a couple times. It's not going to be perfect, but we'll get there. Because this has to be moved out of the way, or ground out of the way. So I'm just going to cut this off and fold these back out of my way. Sometimes this works out, sometimes it doesn't. If not, I can just cut it off. I had to grind it away anyway. It's way quicker to slice it back than it is to cut it out of the way. You need a tire grinder. It's one of these wheels right here. You can get them for drills, or you can get them for a bunch of different applications, bunches of different sizes. I'll put a link below to these. This is like 20 grit, maybe 40 grit sandpaper. You could use just sandpaper, but I'm going to warn you. You can't overheat the tire. If you get the tire too hot to the point that the rubber starts to melt, no new rubber will stick to that, okay? And wherever you don't grind, the new rubber is not going to stick. So I'm going to go, just like welding, I need to make a V groove in there for new rubber to stick. I need to open up this wound and make it look a lot worse. So I'm just going to start grinding in there. You see my threads? Some repairs, vertical repairs like this, are way more successful than a long gash because you haven't broken these threads. These threads wrap around. There's a steel cord that wraps around here. They wrap under it, over it, and back up to the top on a radial to the tire. And they go all the way around. So around to the other side, around the other bead. And this is what keeps, I mean, without the threads, this is just a giant inner tube, and it's going to blow up to the size of, you know, it's going to blow up to the size of a bus. The threads are what actually holds everything in so it doesn't just keep expanding like an inner tube. But it looks like I've only broken, you know, maybe 4 or 5 threads. That's not bad at all. Where if you cut across here and you've broken, you know, 120 threads, you're going to have a lot harder time sewing it up. The inside, the threads are way closer, so you don't really have to penetrate as deep on the inside. You're just kind of flattening out the surface so you have a nice flat surface for your natural rubber to stick to. So you can just barely see the threads. That's good enough. That's what we want. The inside, it's really not divoted down. It's just there. Now all these threads, you don't want to poke out a ton of threads you're not going to cover. Because threads, that's an air passage, and air will fill up into that passage and blow up. So you don't want to expose threads over here that you're not going to cover with new rubber. Yes, you have to sew. We're using nylon thread. This tire actually even says nylon on it. This is the exact same size thread as in virtually all tires. It's just heavy gauge. I'll put a link below. It's just heavy gauge thread. Okay? This right here is a leather sewing awl. It's just a sharp metal thing, and there's a little bit of a hook right here. You'll see. So when I poke it in, you can poke it out. Okay? This just has a little bit of a barb on it. You just hook the barb on, and you just pull it through. You can lick the end of this. It makes it wet and makes it go through a little easier. So, get plenty of thread. And what we're going to do is you're going to go from the outside back in through the inside. So, I'm just going to grab it through the inside and back. And the reason we do that is instead of taking the thread and just coming over to this side, as you see it hangs up a little bit, but if you go down every single time, your thread tucks lower and it's buried into the rubber a little bit more. I guess we'll do a fast forward montage of this. Another trick is to not grab in the same line. So if your threads go like this, is don't poke all your holes in the same line this way, because then you're grabbing that exact same thread, where if you go in or out a little bit, see how this one's out a little bit further, this one's in a little bit further. You just grab different threads as you go. I'll finish this off and bring you guys back. Then get some, and you want to put enough tension that it's pulling, but it's not going to rip that hole out. One thing I didn't think of when I first started doing this years ago was how much, when a couple of these strings are broken, the normal strings, is the tire doesn't necessarily want to expand this way, it actually wants to expand this way. So this part wants to come out, and so you can get a bulge there. So I made sure to do some deep X's here, but you have to be careful how much you pull from this direction to this direction, because the rubber in between those strings isn't very strong, and you can, like, I call it zippering, where you can just, you know, if you just poked a hole right here, you could zipper it across on a radial tire anyway. Finishing off my knots. There are probably better knots. If somebody can show me a better knot. I looked up like surgical stitching and stuff like that, and I couldn't find one that held good like I wanted to, because you got to keep this under quite a bit of tension. What I like to do is just tie a simple overhand knot around the base of one of my strings. Okay? I'm tying it with the other string just through the center at the base of where it pops out. That's it. That just gives me enough friction that I can pull the other direction with the other knot, and it gives me enough tension there that generally, where it's not going to slide back, that I can just start tying a couple overhand knots. And then it usually a square knot. If it didn't, it's hard to tell if it didn't slide around, or just two overhand knots. Doesn't really matter. That's it. We're going to finish that off. But don't throw away these excesses right here, because I usually end up using those as well. Now we need our vulcanizing glue. And this is something you make as well. You use cushion gum, which I'll show you in a second. And you just cut that up in little chunks, and you mix it with, I've been mixing it with ethanol-free gasoline at about 50-50. And I mean, just a teeny bit. You don't need a ton. And you let it set. And the cushion gum, you'll see it in a second, dissolves. The cushion gum is just uncured rubber. And it dissolves, and it takes maybe 2 days, and it turns into just like a like rubber cement. But you can't use rubber cement. Anyway, that's just black goo. We need to brush that on everywhere we're going to apply our patch material and really saturate those strings, because this is what's going to help plug up those little teeny holes and stuff that I just barely, I mean, I poked a bunch of holes in there sewing, and so that's going to help flow into those and make sure those are sealed off good. I don't want dirt to get into there, so I'm just going to put a piece of plastic while I flip this over so it doesn't actually touch, because now it'll pick up anything you set it on. So we set this down here. I can do the inside without stuff picking up everywhere. Okay, this is cushion gum right here. It has roughly a 1 year shelf life, maybe a little bit longer, unless you store it in the freezer, and then it's pretty much indefinite. This is the exact same thing all tires are made out of. This is uncured rubber. So I'm just going to take a piece. There's a protective film on one side. The other side's not. It's still a little frozen. I'm not going to thaw the whole thing out. I'm going to cut off pieces that I need. And what I generally do is I cut off what I think I'm going to need, and any leftover, I actually mix that with my gas. I'll chop it up into little pieces. I mix that with my gas and let that turn into new vulcanizing glue for myself. You want to cut it into like, I cut it into little chunks. It's pretty stretchy. It's actually stretchy more than one way than the other. But let's thaw it out. And all we're going to do is take this stuff. I mean, you could actually chew on this. This is just like gum. It's called cushion gum or just gum rubber. And all we're going to do is mold it into our thing. We can do smaller pieces. You just want to make sure you don't really trap any air. Okay? And you use a tip of scissors or something else. You'll watch all these third world country videos. And they're using the tips of their scissors to do this because it works. The very first repairs are the most crucial, or the very first couple applications of rubber, because you're going down into your repair. If your hole is wide, you can even take pieces and wrap them in and out a little bit. If you got spaces between your stitching, but we want to fill up that hole between our stitching. Let's get there. And we're just going to build this up to roughly a little bit higher of a mound than our hole is. Okay? Now I'm going to use this. This is something I just made. This is just a, these are just two washers welded together. You can buy these. I just wanted to do it. Threw this on the lathe, made a nice wooden handle, bent a rod. Two washers. It's just knurled. Start in the middle. We're just going to work our way out to make sure there's no trapped air in there. Any air that's kind of left in there now, because I haven't done the inside, is going to push out. But we'll get there. And this all melts and turns into kind of a liquid, and it will smooth itself out. The key to this repair really is the sewing. That's the strength. Otherwise, this stuff is just a giant inner tube, like I said. So you just kind of need to eyeball it that there's about the same amount of rubber you took out. You know, I sit probably proud a 32nd of an inch. And now we'll do the inside. Okay, the inside, you just kind of build it up. I got my center low spot where I ground down to meet the two patches. Put that in. We're going to stretch this out, try to get this about as wide as possible. Now you'll notice, if you've ever watched these third world country videos, that a lot of times they put a patch on the inside. And the reason they put a patch on the inside is because patches generally have like a mesh, like a nylon string mesh woven into them. I don't think that's really that necessary. You can also buy this cushion gum with the mesh already built in, so sometimes you'll see them use that. You can't find that in the US. At least I can't. This stuff is pretty much only made and used in the US on huge like industrial tires for like rock quarries and stuff like that, because the cost of labor to do this, you would never, this isn't done because by the time you paid somebody to do this, you could have just bought a new tire in the US. Okay, I'm spreading this out as my patch. Now I'm going to reinforce that with this excess string. All I'm going to do is take this string and I'm going to lay it into that. Okay, and I'm just going to do a zigzag pattern or something really fast. And that will help structure it. I'm going to take my glue and I'm going to saturate that string now. We'll just cover it a little bit and then put one more patch, one more thin sheet of cushion gum over the top of it. I'm not pooling it. I don't want it to pool up. I'm just trying to soak this string because this is what helps the string bond to the rubber. It becomes a solid part of it. That's about it. You guys get the idea. Okay, this is what makes the magic happen. And it's actually not that expensive. This is about $100. There are a couple versions of this. So don't just go buy one without knowing what you're buying. These are all Chinese made, but there's, I think, 3 or 4 different ones. I'll put a link below to this exact same one. You want one with 2 heating elements. And then you want the proper dies. There's some that have like really small round dies. You want these more rectangular dies. They're bigger. The bigger the dies, the better. I think this one comes with 4 or 5 different sets of dies. This is what you actually pinch between your tires. You know, this would be a large set. This would be great for like truck tires and stuff like that. I've used these before. Some of them, I mean, the ties are so small. I don't know what you would pretty much just use it for inner tubes and stuff like that. But these are the most common ones I use right here for ATV tires. It seems like I've done this so many times now on ATV tires. I've saved, if you added up the cost of an ATV tire every time I've repaired it, $3,000. So the $100 that this machine costs around there, this is paid for itself over and over and over again. So let me show you. This is a heating element. This is a heating element. They're both connected through these switches, and then it just plugs into a regular 120 volt outlet, and they both heat up. And it clamps down because you need heat and pressure to vulcanize rubber. It's pretty self-explanatory, but essentially this is just a giant clamp that clamps the rubber in between there and cures it. These dies right here are the smaller set, and they were a little bit too small. This used to actually be squared. I actually had to sand those off to make it fit on there a little bit better, and that doesn't affect the performance. Just letting you know what I did. And so both of these just kind of stay on there, and you clamp the rubber, okay? You cannot let this touch the tire though. This will glue itself to the tire and you will never get it off. So I end up using, these are just thin little sheets of aluminum. This was actually the front of a dryer, but you could use, you know, a sheet of steel or something. Take an old like aerosol can or something and cut it open, get a thin sheet of steel to set down on there. Because once this is cured, it bonds pretty well, and you actually, this die will pull off, and then this you have to actually grab with the corner of like a pair of pliers and peel it up. You could use tin foil. Problem with tin foil, it glues it so good, you're going to be picking off pieces of tin foil. So I take my little protector thing, and this is also where these little yellow marks that I left help me out, is now I know exactly where to position the center of this and not roll it up too far or whatever. Okay, everything's lined up. Usually it slides a little bit. Also support this. You don't want it like bending the tire a way you don't want it to bend, because it'll kind of form it that way because it melts that whole little section of rubber. Everywhere else in the world does this, and this is just common, like normal knowledge, except for in Europe and North America, and it's like impossible to find any information on it. It's all died off because our labor costs are so high that you know, the half hour I spent getting to that point, you know, you've already paid for a new tire at a shop. All we have to do now, has a timer on it, 60 minutes. Usually a tire sidewall, 60 minutes, ding, done. I like to plug it in, and then I wrap these with, usually I use welding gloves just to keep the heat in so heat's not expanding, and I make sure that it heats up the whole area. So this gets hot and the bottom one gets hot. You want a unit with both heating elements. You'll see one a little bit cheaper and it's only one heating. Nope, you don't want to do that. So I like to bake it for an hour, and then I like to have at least a 30-minute cool down, Because otherwise, when you take this apart super hot, one, you're dealing with all this stuff is like 300 degrees. I mean, it's been about 2 hours, and this is still pretty warm, and that's still like 150 degrees or something, but it's manageable. You'll notice that this ooze out, so I got some ooze out here, which is good, that it has to have heat and pressure, because without the pressure, I mean, this is pretty weak rubber. I mean, this is almost just the same cushion gum. If it's not under pressure, it doesn't cure. I mean, I clamped that down pretty good. And inevitably, it always sticks a little bit somewhere. There we go. And the bottom heating element is stuck in there. And it's nice and warm still. There we go. If you don't put these papers, or these metal pieces here, you're never getting those dies off, like I said. I usually grab this. Boom. Then I usually just reform this back. Now I'll peel off the inside one. There's my inside one, my outside one. Good. Feels back the same thickness. And then these edges right here that didn't have a lot of pressure, so just on the very edge, you just trim that up. Usually I just take my knife and kind of peel it back, and it stretches, and you just kind of cut it to back to where you ground and was under pressure, so it actually bonded. And now we can just take this. I mean, this is just for looks, but we can glue that back down with the I'll show you the glue, the same glue I used to use the sidewall patches for trail repairs. Let me show you the inside. See, I don't know if you guys can see, but right here, this is the original rubber. It's actually dented in. So the clamp actually, and over here, this surface is actually higher than this surface because it remelts the original rubber of the tire and cures it. Some of this stuff up here is uncured because it oozed out, but I mean, actually that feels pretty cured. But you can grind that off if you want. Very little on this one, but when you first start out doing this, you're going to have a lot of spillage over, which isn't a big deal. Just cut it off, you know, a little bit of wastage doesn't matter. Cut it off or use the buffer wheel just to buff it down a little bit. So now I'll use this glue right here, and I'll just glue that back down, and that is going nowhere, and nobody's ever going to be the wiser. You can't really tell. Generally with tires that don't even have sidewall stuff, you can't tell at all. But I'll put this back down there, glue it down. So that's just a pro tip. You know, I've done enough of these to know that that'll make it look better. I guess it would offer a little bit of protection, but that right there is stronger than if you got a hole right there. So if the stick came up and tried to poke you right here, this is a stronger area. Your repair area is stronger than just the regular areas of the tire. So like butter. Go watch a video on making this. Save you a ton of time if you have a manual tire changer and no scratches. I moved it to the inside for really no reason. Can't tell where it's at. You have to know where it's at to even see it. Besides, it's a little bit clean, but no bulging, no nothing. I took it up to about 25 psi. I only got about 12 pounds in the tire, but it's right there. Nothing. These are supposedly 8-ply rating, and I don't even know what punctured that besides. You know what punctured it? We know what punctured it. A Sasquatch, huh? Go catch Sasquatch. Go get him. Let's go get him. Just thought I'd show you guys a couple more repairs. Right there. That is a repair. This is one of my very first repairs. I wanted to show you that because this is what happens when you don't sew it well. You see that I have a, I don't know if you can see, there's a slight bulge to this. I have ran this over everything though. I'm not worried about it popping, but you can redo it. I could grind this back down, just redo it. That's no big deal. There's one right here. You can't really see. There is one right here. You can kind of see that one. And I think there are 3 on the inside of this tire as well. Oh, here's one of my first ones too. There's a little bit of a bulge on this one as well. I did not sew it well. Yeah, you can see that bulge good. So you don't sew it well, but there's one right there. So some of them I learned, you know, you got to sew it well. I think there's one right there. I think there's one more. There might be 7 on this one tire. In my defense, Yamaha, as part of the safety recall back in the day, they had to put 2-inch spacers on the rear to space the rear tires out 2 inches. And I think they already had a little bit wider tracks. So they might stick out 3 inches further than the front. So everything you miss with your front, this much is gonna catch on your rear. And so I think I'm missing something, and I've caught things. And the video I did like 3 years ago where I put this patch on, it's still on. I've never taken it off because I put it on the outside because I wanted to watch it. So go watch the video if you want to do the trail repair / permanent repair. About 1.5 inches. Let's go, Ginger.